see where we are at. So the idea would be to simply regroup and determine, what we've developed up to this point about 2012, etc. And the reason that I'd like to do that is because we are moving into a realm that no one has ever reached before, at least in a way where, we would share with one another via television or on the computer. And if you don't think we've are touching ground that no one has ever tread before, take a look at this. We're going to show you the first picture ever released of God. But before I do, I want to show you the scripture in 1 John 1:5 that says, "This then is the message which we have heard of him and declare unto you, that God is light." Okay? God is light, which means God is photon. There's no way around that. If God is not human, as it says in the book of Numbers, and if God is light, as it says here, then God is photon. And this is what photon, is believed to look like. So then this would be what God is believed to look like. See? Now, if we are created in the image and likeness of God, then this is also what we look like. Not our physical bodies, which were created in the image and likeness of our mothers and our fathers, but the being that we have mistakenly for all of these years referred to as soul or spirit, the photon person that we are, that operates the body. This is what we look like. And if Jesus is the Son of God, it means he is the son of photon, or entangled with photon. And of course, this is what Jesus would look like as well. So, what we studied and brought up to this point is the question of, if we are photon, which we are, and if God is photon, which it is, what about praying to God? How does that work? And we found something very interesting. We found that words don't work. Not at all. That what is necessary in what we call praying to God is to understand ourselves in that quantum realm where, quote-unquote, God exists. And we found that the way we communicate is via exciting electrons which dispatch photons. In other words, that's our prayer. Or exciting electrons which absorb photons, where we would absorb that which is sent by God or Jesus or whatever. And let me show you how that would look. And this is a diagram, and it's a pretty good one. In the center, you see a nucleus. Well, that, in one case, that nucleus could be God sending a message to us. Say. And that message, that little purple one you see there, would be the photon. But it also could have us as the nucleus in the center, sending a photon to God, which would actually be what we call prayer. Everything works according to this. And why does it? It does because we are electric instruments. The human body was created to work on electricity. And so communication with it from external sources to us is all in the form of the subatomic quantum, photon or electron. Now, what I'm going to show you next is interesting, and I think you'll see a pretty good analysis here of how we communicate to God, how God communicates to us. This was put together by John Kramer. And John Kramer is a noted physicist from England, and he works at a university out in Washington State. But let's take a look at this diagram. And this is called John Kramer's Transactional Interpretation. On the left side, you'll see the diagrams that John Kramer has put together to kind of demonstrate how it works. And on the right side, his comments. Now, what he says, if you can read the right side, he says, reading from the top down, emitter E sends out an alpha wave. All right, let's look over to the left side here. And on the left side, you'll see emitter E. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to call that, just for the sake of conversation and try to explain it, I'm going to call emitter E Jesus. Jesus sends out an offer wave. You know, I stand at the door and knock. If anybody will open the door, okay? Then you see on the left side, absorber A, and I'm going to put US in there to mean that's us. And so here we have Jesus making the offer wave. I stand at the door, knock. That's the photon. And then us opening the door by receiving that. And so John Kramer says, E, as we have it, Jesus, sends out an offer wave, okay, which is picked up by absorber A, which I have marked as us. Now we drop down to the middle diagram on the left side. And it says here that absorber A sends a confirmation wave. So you see it going back from us to Jesus, if you would. And when that happens, now this isn't spiritual, this is not religious, this is not hocus pocus, this is how the photons and the quantum subatomic realm works with electrons. This is the way it works, okay? So we have us, our photon, sending back a wave to the Jesus photon, accepting the initial offer. And then John Kramer says that when that occurs, the offer wave and the confirmation wave cancel each other out everywhere in the universe except in the direct path of the emitter and the absorber. So if it's us and Jesus or Jesus and us, that is the only place where this is taking place. And then if we will look at the left side at the very bottom, we find out that this is where the transaction is then completed. Okay? The transaction is completed. Contact has been made. Folks, you can try to change this any way you wish, but this is the way the subatomic realm works. What you have always called the spiritual realm. This is the way it works. This is the way we, quote unquote, pray to God. This is the way God responds to us. And it requires us to acknowledge and to receive that offer. And I'll show you how we do that later through our meditation. But as John Kramer says at the bottom of that paragraph on the right side, this diagram is all you need to understand all of the quantum mysteries. It's the way it works. It's the way it works. And this is exactly what the Bible is talking about when it talks about prayer and communication between us and God. Now, you've got to understand something about this. You can no longer operate with what you call God on the basis of sitting talking to somebody, because the only one hearing you is the wall or the ceiling. I mean, it would be like if you wanted to talk to someone in California. You can't just sit in your chair and talk to them. You have to use the equipment, which is the phone or the cell phone. Okay? In the same way, to communicate with what we call God, or even departed loved ones, we have to use the equipment which is provided for us. And it's kind of like a pineal cell phone. Okay? There is no other way. You are photon. God is photon. Jesus is photon. And those who have passed on from us physically, loved ones from our family and friends who have died, they're also photon. So why shouldn't we be able to communicate with them if they're photon and we're photon? See? Oh, religion will say, oh, no, he's talking about communicating with the dead. No, I'm not. You can't communicate with anything that's dead. Those loved ones or friends who have passed on, their bodies are dead, not them. The photon cannot die. And so if our photon is alive and we happen now to be in a body, what should prevent us from communicating with their photon who is alive and presently outside of a body, for all we know? But you've got to go into meditation to do this. And what you do is you concentrate on the forehead, which stimulates and excites the electrons in the pineal gland, which then either sends out a photon, a prayer to God, or absorbs a photon, a message from God, a message from a loved one who has passed away. You have to do it that way, because it's just the way it works. And you can't do it by sitting there and praying or singing or talking any more than you could talk to somebody in California without using a phone. You can't. It's not the way it was made. Now, in religious terms, we have the word spirit. And spirit refers to invisible beings. Given the fact that the Bible has said in the book of Numbers that God is not human but is light, we have determined that God then has to be a photon. Well, how do you communicate then? Say? And what does the Bible say about that? There's a statement that Jesus made in John 4:24. And the next slide, we're going to take a look at that. Here it is, John 4:24. God is a spirit. Well, what is being said in everyday language today is God is a photon. And then Jesus says, and they that serve him must serve him in spirit, which means it has to be done as photon, and the only way it can be done as photon is by energizing the electrons in the pineal gland, which then dispatch the photon or receive the photon. So when you hear the word spirit, you don't have to tell anybody in your church, but when you hear that word spirit, immediately think of, what does that mean? What is that? What is the reality of that? And you know that the reality of that word is photon, the messenger particle, the light. Now, remember, everything you're hearing today is based on the simple fact that the Bible in the book of Numbers said God is not human. And in 1 John it says that God is light. A non-human light being is a photon, which means that the quantum law, the quantum rule, the way it was created in the subatomic realm, applies to that photon. Now, if you're ready to make contact, okay, either with God, Jesus, or with a departed loved one, you have to complete the transaction, as John Kramer outlined in the quantum realm as photon and electron. And remember what we just saw here. Jesus didn't say, yeah, you should try to do it this way. He said, you must. You must. You can't try to talk to somebody in California without a phone. You must use a phone. Okay, so we know what God looks like because a little while ago we took a look at a photon. And we know what we look like because we're created in God's image and likeness. We're photon. And we know how we communicate with the parallel worlds in that realm we call the higher realm or the divine realm, and that is by the transactional teleportation. Now, another very important point that we shared in the previous meetings. And this is one it's hard for a lot of people to deal with. We are confined to a part of the universe where we only experience 10% of matter in the universe. 90% of it is hidden from us. We only can see 10%, and the rest is invisible or dark matter. You could walk out your front door, out your back door, and look up in the sky. There could be a UFO hovering over you right now, and you couldn't see it because it could be encased in dark matter, and you can't see dark matter. And this, if you think I'm making this stuff up, is science fiction stuff. It's not. Let's go to Gary Toller, who is with the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, and we'll see exactly what he says about this, which is, I think, pretty interesting. There he is right there. Dr. Gary Toller, Goddard Space Flight Center, Greenbelt, Maryland. Toller has used his data as another way to calculate total amounts of visible matter in the universe. These calculations confirm other estimates that 90% of matter in the universe is missing or unseen dark matter. We're talking about matter. We're talking about physical things. We're talking about cities in the skies or UFOs or whatever. You can't see them because you can only see 10% of everything that exists. Let's go on to another slide because I wanted to quote and have you meet Dr. Bruce Margon. Here we go to this slide. Bruce Margon is chairman of the astronomy department at the University of Washington, and he told the New York Times, it's a fairly embarrassing situation to admit that we cannot find 90% of the universe. This problem has scientists scrambling to try and find where and what this dark matter is. What it is anybody's guess, adds Dr. Margon. Mother Nature is having a double laugh. She's hidden most of the matter in the universe and hidden it in a form that cannot be seen. Let's move on to Dr. Sadulay and what he tells the New York Times in the next slide. And Dr. Sadulay tells the New York Times, not only are we not at the center of the universe as we know it, but we aren't even made up of the same stuff as most of the universe. We're just this small excess, an insignificant phenomena, and the universe is something completely different. Comments Walter Stockwell, most of the universe is something other than human. Our world and the people in it are made of something which comprises an insignificant portion of the physical universe. Did you see what he said there? Most of the universe is something other than human. Of course. Do you connect that to what the Bible said? God is not a man. God is not human. God is light. Because the physical universe, beyond the 10% that we can see, is photon. Intelligent beings of the subatomic level that can take over or inhabit bodies as we have inhabited the bodies that we have now. So, God turns out to be photon in a quantum world that makes up 90% of matter or existence, which we cannot see or experience. Now, once again, and I can't repeat this too many times, we have shown the Bible telling us in Numbers that God is not a human being. No ears, no eyes, no mouth, nothing. God is light. That means God is photon. God is not a he or a she, but an it. Photon, like it or not, that's what the Bible says. God is not a man. God is not human. Therefore, God is not a he or a she. God has to be, in our language, an it. So we have to deal with dark matter, which is the 90% of the universe. Now, when we start to think of this, and we start to think that dark matter makes up 90% of the universe, and we can only see 10%. Let's try to see if we can find scriptures in the Bible that will connect what we call God, and we now know is the supreme photon, to dark matter. Let's go back to that statement by Gary Toller in the next slide. 90% of matter in the universe is missing or unseen dark matter. Let's get some Bible scriptures in here. Psalms 18:11. He made darkness his secret place. So he dwells in the dark matter. 1 Kings 8:12. The Lord said that he would dwell in the thick darkness. Isaiah 45:3. And I will give you the treasures of darkness and the hidden riches of secret places, that you may know me. So here in the 90% that we have no clue is out there as far as our ability to see it or experience it is concerned, we have shown the Bible saying that's where God exists. Now that's basically where we are at this point. The entire awesome power of cosmic life is coming at us from a part of the universe that we cannot see and cannot experience. Religion, church, the pastors call it spirit. It's not. It's photon. It's atom. It's electron. It's proton. It's the supreme photon, God's creation. So that is the direction that we have to take. And we realize that it is available to us through the pineal gland of the brain, which we stimulate. We stimulate the electrons at the pineal gland of the brain in meditation. Okay, so where are we going with all this? The next point, which is extremely important, is December the 21st, 2012. I have done much on this, and it is all available on DVDs that you can send for, or it's available on the internet. But I thought for our purposes here, right now, that we could do some slides and just catch up on 2012 and what's going on. Let's look at the slide. Pacal Votan, and this is the guy that was the Mayan astronomer or scientist. In 600 AD, he predicted that because civilizations would get totally consumed in industrialization and material things, they would lose their interdependence with nature. And that would result in a great shaking of the earth. Civilizations then would find things starting to collapse around them that are traditional, and it would culminate on December the 21st, 2012 at 11:11 a.m. Votan did not predict the end of the world, but rather a change in the thinking, a change in the way that we have our priorities, a change to return to a communion with nature and a move away from the violence and the neglect of others that we have been doing for so many thousands of years. Let's go on to the next slide. NASA confirmed, and this is an interesting one too, and we'll show you why later, but they confirmed that the largest solar storms ever to be recorded are scheduled to happen between 2010 to 2012. And now let's look at some of the things that we've already seen happen. We've seen global warming, which a lot of people try to say, there's nothing to it. Well, think back to the Noah story when people didn't pay any attention to him. Even though that's mythology, that was the general gist of the story. We've seen the Soviet Union collapse. We've seen the Twin Towers collapse. This presidential election, which defies all tradition in this country. We've seen the financial collapse and all of these big financial wizards coming into all kinds of difficulties, and the world, all over the world, it's just been shaken to its core, and yet this is really just starting as far as the 2012 culmination is concerned. And then let's go to the next slide. It says, in 500 BC, Buddha said the great change and the coming of the second Buddha would occur in 2,500 years. That would bring it to right now, and that would put the Buddha prophecy right in line with the Pakal Mayan prophecy. Another thing that is important to consider is that on December the 21st, 2012, at 11:11 a.m., the sun will align with the center of our galaxy for the first time in 26,000 years. And finally, Nostradamus predicted the great shaking. He didn't pinpoint, he didn't say December 21st, 2012, but he said it would occur when the astronomical signs Scorpio, Sagittarius, and Ophiuchus align together, which occurs on December the 21st, 2012. Okay? Now, so this is a very simple thumbnail sketch, which brings us up to the point where we are now. And the last thing that we studied was the work by Nostradamus. And as I said, though Nostradamus didn't say December 21st, 2012, he did say it would happen at the coming together of Ophiuchus, Sagittarius, and I always draw by Scorpio. Okay, and that is when the sun will align with the center of those three, and it will happen on December the 21st, 2012. I've never been a Nostradamus fan because when you read his stuff, it is so rambling and crazy. And then you read books by other people who are as equally rambling and crazy trying to explain what he meant. But I'm going to give Nostradamus the benefit of the doubt now because for the way he wrote, because I just recently learned that one of the problems he had was being afraid of the church, because the things that he would say aggravated the church, and in those days, when you aggravated the church, they came for you, and you know what that meant. So, but if you pick up and try to read Nostradamus, let me show you in this slide from his almanac of 1562 what you'll run into. Look at this. Moved by lion near lion, he will undermine. Taken captive, pacified by a woman. He will not hold as well as they will waver. Placed unpassed to oust the soul from rage. Nostradamus Almanac of 1562. So you can go completely nuts trying to figure out what this guy's talking about. And then you can go further out of your mind listening to people from all over the world who write books and who are going to interpret for you what they think he was talking about. But you see, when you look at Nostradamus and connecting this to 2012, there is something that is provable, and that's why I focused on it. The fact that Nostradamus called for the great shaking to occur when Sagittarius, Ophiuchus, and Scorpio come together brings his prediction squarely to December 21st, 2012, because that's when it's going to happen. Let me show you kind of a star map drawing that will give you an idea. Here you can see Ophiuchus holding the serpent with his foot squarely on Scorpio, and over into the left-hand corner is Sagittarius firing his arrow, and everything will come together right at the center point, and that is where the sun will align with the center of our galaxy for the first time in 26,000 years. So the Nostradamus prediction, if you would, has credibility because it lines up with the astronomical fact of the sun's position on December the 21st and 2012, and Pakal Votan's prediction of that time. The next point that's interesting is the astronomical alignment of Ophiuchus, Sagittarius, and Scorpio carries with it a curious connection to a sign of a wheel with 8 spokes. If you have watched the History Channel, and they did a program on 2012, you will see that the alignment, when shown in a cosmic diagram, which I'm going to show you right now, here it is, it takes on, according to the History Channel, a wheel with the 8 spokes. And if you look right at the center of the diagram, you'll see the number 1. Now just shift a little teeny bit to the right and up, and you see the number 2. That's the second line. Then over to the right in the outer part, you see 3. Right below that, 4. Come down to the bottom center, 5. Move over a little bit to the left, 6. And then further to the left, 7. And above that, 8. So you have the wheel with the 8 spokes. Okay, and that is in the astronomical alignment as shown by the History Channel. Well, there are several factors that bring various predictions of December 21st, 2012 together based on this 8-spoked wheel, which will manifest at that time. So first we're going to look at the Mayan calendar. Could very well have been put together by Pakal Votan. But anyhow, here's the Mayan calendar. Now, if you look closely, and I hope you can see this, if you go right at the center and up to, say, 12 o'clock, you'll see that first point, or the first spoke. Move over to where you normally see about 2 o'clock on the clock, and you'll see the second one. You come down to about 3 o'clock, the third, 4 o'clock. And then if you go all the way around, you'll see it's an 8-spoked wheel. So here, the Mayan calendar is an 8-spoked wheel. And the alignment of the constellations on December the 21st, 2012, give us an 8-spoked wheel. The second connection of interest to the 8-spoked wheel would be that of Buddha. The prophecy of Buddha is quite consistent with the prophecy of Pakal Votan. And it's also demonstrated in the Buddhic sacred wheel, which is called the Dharma Wheel. Buddha divided the time until the ending of the age and the coming of the second Buddha. And he divided it into 3 parts: the former day of the law, the middle day of the law, and finally what he called the latter day of the law. And if we look at the next slide, this is how the time was divided. The existence of the Buddha 2,500 years ago. The Buddha prediction, the former day of the law, would be 500 years plus 500 years. That would equal 1,000 years. Well, from 500 BC, that would bring you to 500 AD. The middle day of the law would be an additional 500 years plus 500 years for an additional 1,000 years, which would bring you up to the year 1500 AD. And the latter day of the law, which would be now, would be an additional 500 years, would bring you up to the year 2000. Or, in give or take a few, but it's 2000. The former day of the law, the middle day of the law, and the latter day of the law brings you to this stage. Now, this is how Buddha made his prophecy about the conditions of the world and the condition of the human mind in the former days, the middle day, and the latter day. Let's look at the next slide. During the former day of the law, the first 1,000 years, the spirit of Buddhism prevails, and people can attain enlightenment through its practice. All is well. In the middle day of the law, that's the next 1,000 years, Buddhism becomes firmly established in society. All is well there. But then we come to the latter day, the next 500 years, which is now. The people lose their desire for enlightenment altogether and are increasingly at the mercy of their greed, anger, and stupidity, which he calls the three poisons. So the prophecy of Buddha brings us to the point of greed, which now coincides with Pakal Votan, who said, the shaking will come because of our obsession with material things and the loss of our interdependence with nature. Now, Buddha predicted that at that time there would be the appearance of the second Buddha, which, as I said, is the period of time which is now. But it is the same as the second coming of Christ. It's not a person coming walking down the street. It's a matter of a change of the mind, a change from carnal consciousness to Christ consciousness, or Krishna consciousness, if you prefer, or Buddha consciousness, not a physical apparition. And here's the interesting point, going back to the Wheel of Eight. The Buddhic pattern is based on the Eightfold Path, which is displayed by the sacred Dharmic Wheel, which we'll see now. And here's the wheel, and you can see the 8 spokes of that wheel. Have you ever seen the Buddhist monks making what they call a mandala? It's a sacred geometrical pattern made with colored sand. And I mean, it really is. They spend hours and hours, I guess it would be. And they're so beautiful. You think, oh my God, it's something we should frame. But they show this complete lack of obsession with material things by taking the sand down to the water, the river, or wherever, and just dumping it. Let me show you in the next slide the Buddhist monks working on a mandala. Now, when they finish with that, that's going to be taken out somewhere to the water and just dumped. Because they want to show their, no matter how much effort, no matter how much time you put into making physical things, no matter how beautiful, that they mean nothing compared to that which is the inner, the photon, what you call the spiritual. What follows now in the next slide is a mandala of the Buddhic Dharmic Wheel. Now remember, we saw the Mayan calendar, the 8-spoked wheel. We saw the 8-spoked wheel of the alignment, the cosmic alignment of the constellations. And now look at this. In the next slide, this is the Buddhic 8-spoked wheel. So it brings Buddha into a total harmony with the Mayan calendar and the prophecy of Pakal Votan, which then moved us to the prophecy of Nostradamus. Now, what's interesting here is that Nostradamus, in his prophecy, in which he talked about the coming together of Ophiuchus, Sagittarius, and Scorpio, in each of these, what they call quatrains, his writings, he had the wheel. Let me show it to you. I'll go on to the next slide. The first one here, you can see up the upper left, and you see the 8-spoked wheel. Now you move over to the next one, and again, the 8-spoked wheel. Then the third one with Scorpio and the 8-spoked wheel. The next one, the 8-spoked wheel. And then the final one is interesting because this is December 21st, 2012. It's completed. The change from the one age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius is completed. And look at the wheel. The spokes are gone. So we see the 8-spoked wheel which places Nostradamus in harmony with the Mayan calendar of 8, the Buddhist Dharmic Wheel of 8, and the astronomical pattern of alignment of the constellations of 8 on December the 21st, 2012. Now, here we go for those in the West. This is very, very important because we now bring Jesus Christ squarely into the same prophecy based on the key that legend has it he gave to the Gnostics of ancient Egypt. And we're going to look at the slide, and this is the key, and I call your attention to the symbol in the center, and there you have it, the 8-spoked wheel. If this is the key to heaven, as the Gnostics say Jesus told them, then we have the 8-spoked wheel of Jesus, the 8-spoked wheel of Nostradamus, the 8-spoked wheel in the alignment of the constellations, the 8-spoked wheel of Buddha, and the 8-spoked wheel of Pakal Votan, all pointing in one direction, and that is December the 21st, 2012. Now, what is important here in the 8-spoked wheel of Jesus is that he named it. And he called that 8-spoked wheel Azozio. Okay? Azozio. A-Z-O-Z-E-O. Azozio. Now, let's try to break that word down. Okay? Because what we're thinking about here, what we're considering here, is the photon, the energy from the universe moving down upon the earth. So it would be photon light coming down to the earth where this great change and shaking has already started. Let's try to break down the word Zozia. I'm going to show you, first of all, in the next slide, this is kind of a pattern, but it is for a polymesyl azo compound. I'm not even sure what that. But I want you to go down to where, just about the last sentence there, and you'll see some yellow lettering. In particular, it says, this invention relates to polymesurable yellow light-absorbing compounds of the azo class. Light-absorbing compounds of the azo class. So azo would be a light absorber. Now let's consider and combine that with the other part of the word zeo, azozio. In the next slide, zeolites have uses in advanced reprocessing methods where their microporous ability to capture some ions while allowing others to pass freely allow many fission products to be efficiently removed from nuclear waste and permanently trapped. So, what do we have? Let's put the two together. We have azo, a light-absorbing compound. We have zeo, or zeolite, which is a crystal filter, or filter crystal. That's right. So azozio is the absorption of cosmic light filtered by crystal. Okay, so we have the wheel with the 8 spokes connected to Pakavotan, to Nostradamus, to the constellations alignment on December 21st, to Buddha, and now to Jesus. And Jesus, in naming this wheel, tells us about cosmic light filtered by crystal. Cosmic light filtered by crystal. So light, which is photon, and as we found is God, is filtered by crystal, which would be azozio, which is the name given by Jesus to the 8-spoked wheel of the Mayans, the Buddhists, Nostradamus, and the astronomical alignment of the constellations on December the 21st, 2012. So then the question would be, is the change in the mass earth brain and the changes that we're seeing in upheavals all around us, the work of the descending light beings. Well, something has just occurred that's very interesting. Now, the following is a headline from a January 15th paper of this year, and we'll go see it in the next slide. "Beam Me Up" is the headline. "Scientists left baffled as mysterious columns of colored light appear in the night skies," by Mail Foreign Service. Last update, 11:29 a.m. on the 15th of January, 2009. Descending light beings is a Zozio, according to Jesus. And are we now seeing the arrival right before our eyes? What you're about to see occurred in Latvia. Take a look at this. This, on the left, you see kind of like a red, and on the right, you see like a blue. These are light beams coming down from the universe, touching down on Earth. Let's look at another one. This one here is a red one, or somewhat red, coming down. We'll move on to the next one, and you see a blue beam of light coming down. And then we have another one here, and over to the right you see the blue beam of light coming down. See? So as we have connected on the sign of 8, the 8-spoked wheel, which is December 21st, 2012, remember that its name is a Zozio, light filtered by crystal. Now, this is important because I want to show you comments from people and scientists concerning the lights you just saw. In the next slide, we see the lights again, and a comment by designer Iger Truhins, who took pictures of these with a standard digital camera. He says, "My son exclaimed, 'The aliens are coming.'" And then we go to the next slide. It says, "But experts are agreed there may be another explanation. Ice crystals in the air." Scientists at the website spaceweather.com said these pillars are not the ordinary kind. Experts in atmospheric optics can't quite figure them out. Light filtered by crystal, not the ordinary kind. The sign of 8 that Jesus talked about, the sign of December the 21st, 2012. Let's see what other comments they made here. In our next slide, these pillars are mysterious. They have unexplained curved tops and even curved arcs coming from their base. Arcs in rare displays like these could be from column crystals. We do not know. Now, isn't it curious? We're getting near 2012. We've tied the wheel with the 8 spokes into 2012. And now we've tied the fact that Jesus has named the wheel with the 8 spokes a Zozio, which is light filtered by crystal, and we have these strange lights showing up, and the scientists saying they could be from column crystals. One other comment from the scientists in our next slide. Skies all over Europe have been filled with such natural phenomena during the cold snap of recent weeks. I think the important point here, whatever you wish to make of this, is that these are mysterious in the words of the scientists. They are not normal light patterns, and they simply say, we don't know. So the wheel of 8, connected to December the 21st, 2012, which Jesus called the Zozio, which means light filtered by crystal, compounds our interest because now we are seeing strange patterns of mysterious lights coming down to the earth, which are a Zozio, light filtered by crystal. The sign of 8. There's another interesting factor to be considered here. Jesus is the light of the world, as we have seen, as is God. Let's take a look at his name. Jesus is a Greek name, and you'll see that name spelled out here. That's the Greek name that we call Jesus. But in Greek, each letter has a numerical value, and as you see, the numerical value of the word Jesus totals up to 888. The eight-spoked wheel, the sign of 8, December the 21st, 2012, and Jesus' Greek name is 888. Now, I want you to also understand something. I don't have the opportunity to show it, but right on the front of this speaker's lectern is the Wheel of 8, the Azozio wheel. And we have had this on this lectern for over just about 20 years. Way before anybody ever dreamed of such a thing, we had that here. Well, the light has descended and the knowledge is being received. People can say, well, I don't know if I believe that. Who cares? Doesn't make any difference whether anybody believes anything. It's happening anyhow, isn't it? It's happening anyhow. And this is the Coptic key of Jesus Christ. It is the 8 of Pakal-Votan. It is the 8 of Buddha, the 8 of the astronomical alignment, and the 8 of Nostradamus. It was quite a while ago when I showed people initially the sign of 8 in the Coptic key given by Jesus, when I introduced you to a book called Jesus Christ, Son of God, written by David Fiedler. This is the cover of that book, Ancient Cosmology and Early Christian Symbolism. In this book written by David Fiedler, we came upon the Coptic key, which is described in the next slide as the book of IEOU. Take a look at this. The first book of IEOU is the book of the Gnosis. It's the insight of nature, of the invisible God, by means of the hidden mysteries, which show the way to the chosen race. And the chosen race are those who follow the instructions to walk the inner pathway, to dispatch the photon by stimulating the electrons of the pineal gland in meditation. And the legend has it that Jesus Christ gave this to the Egyptian Gnostics. So let's try to define, if we could, who these Coptic Gnostics were. In the next slide, it says the Coptics were a Christian sect of Egypt, but they tended to support Islamic invasions of the area in preference to Byzantine rule. And the Gnostics, that word comes from the Greek term gnosis, which means knowledge. A Gnostic is a person who believes in the higher spiritual knowledge. Someone who claimed to have special knowledge, such as passwords for getting into the heavens. A philosophical and religious system teaching that knowledge rather than faith was the key to salvation. Now let me show you a few things I took from the Encyclopedia Britannica that relate to the Gnostic view, and we'll try to, put this in line with Jesus giving them this key and so forth and so on. So let's turn to that. In the Gnostic view, the unconscious self of man is co-substantial with the Godhead. But because of a tragic fall, it is thrown into a world that is completely alien to its real being. Through revelation from above, man becomes conscious of his origin, essence, and transcendent destiny. My friends, you become conscious of your origin, essence, and transcendent destiny when you understand you are photon. Let's go back. Gnostic revelation is to be distinguished both from philosophical enlightenment because it cannot be acquired by the forces of reason. And it's to be distinguished from Christian revelation because it is not rooted in history and transmitted by Scripture. It is rather the intuition of the mystery of the self. And that's what Jesus was trying to tell you when he said the kingdom of God is within you. Let's go back. This world is therefore alien to God, who is for the Gnostics depth and silence, beyond any name or predicate, the absolute, the source of good spirits who together form the realm of light. These conceptions are expressed in various myths, which employ material from many traditional religions, but serve to express a basic experience that is new, the discovery of the unconscious self or spirit in man, which sleeps in him until awakened by the Savior. The Gnostic sects of the 2nd century made use of Hebrew and Christian religious writings employing the allegorical method to extricate Gnostic meanings from them. I wanted to just stay for 1 second here, say, the discovery, what they said in there, the discovery of the unconscious self which sleeps in you until awakened by the Savior. Remember, this is where Jesus says, I knock on the door. If you hear that knock, if you are drawn, then you will in your meditation stimulate the pineal gland. The electrons from the pineal gland will become excited and will throw that door open and receive that light coming down from the Jesus photon. That's what that's about. So we have a Christian sect of Egyptian desert people that were not really in harmony with basic Christianity, that believed that knowledge of the higher realms was the key, and how true that is. People say, oh, I have faith, but what they really have faith in is something somebody else told them, instead of really making contact with the invisible powers of nature. And this is something I'll be sharing with you down the road. You will be able to make contact, and it's coming on you so soon, with departed loved ones who are in the photon realm. They're not dead. So the book we are referring to, the Fiedler book, it's referring to, it provides the information that the Gnostics claimed came from Jesus, the Coptic key. And it has some elements that are now taking on a significant meaning to us in our lives because of the 2012 involvement. So in other words, the Gnostics' approach to God was the quantum subatomic approach, and now the evidence you are about to see will, in my opinion, prove them 100% right. Once again, we'll go to the next slide, and here's that Coptic key. All right? I want to hold on the slide just there for a minute for a reason. You see the seal, which is the 8-spoked wheel. You see the name of the seal is Azozio. And we went all through that, light absorbing and filtered by crystal and so forth. But also, if you look right under where it says this is its name, Azozio, you'll see it says hold this cipher 4555 in your hand. So now, we not only connect the wheel with 8 spokes to 2012, we connect 4555 to 2012. Hidden Meanings Conference Center at the Village Green Shopping Center, Route 9, Forked River.